Coming up on this week's episode of the Ask Women podcast, we have an interesting episode. I'm on the phone, Chris in the studio with Pat, the pickup artist. We are going to talk to him all about how to approach women, how to gain confidence, and how to kind of manipulate women. We're not so sure if it's really manipulation. But anyway, he gives really good advice that you want to hear, so keep listening. It's an awesome episode.
Hey, welcome to the Ask Women podcast. I'm Kristen Carney, your host, and I am here in spirit with Marnie. She's at her house, but I can feel her, I can smell her, and I also have next to me Patrick Hickey from the Adam Carolla Show, one of the lackeys here, who is a dating expert wannabe. I don't know if that's a good intro, but
well, he's got the last name Hickey. He has to be a dating expert.
Oh my God! Before we started taping, I said, because on his binder, because Patrick has a binder full of this pickup artist stuff, and on the front of the binder it says by Patrick E. Hickey, and I said a dating artist couldn't have thought of a better, more perfect name.
Yeah, every single person in my industry like chooses names like that, and you were born with it. It's like what you were meant to be.
Especially
with you didn't have to take any of those classes or courses to figure out what your job was in the future. You knew it right away.
It was a burden as a child. Hickey was not a strong name. It rhymes with too many other
when you were younger, it wasn't so great. Wait, so tell me about this book. Tell me, are you a pickup artist? No.
I am a retired pickup artist. I took pride in this for many, many years. I also had a partner in crime during my single years. His nickname is Dr. Hyde because he's a college professor at a very well-known university.
Then I can't make a rapist joke because you partner in crime. I just was like.
And long before we were both married, we had about a 3-year run together where we just
Gay lovers.
We were working on tactics and tenets and all these different ways to basically meet women and potentially sleep with them.
But it's surprising to me, and I'm not saying this to insult other pickup artists, but Patrick is a very traditionally handsome man who is tall, he's got a nice physique, and you would not think that he would need pickup artistry moves in order to get the ladies, but apparently even the handsome still do.
That's a good question. So why did you think you needed these moves? What wasn't working for you, or what was it that you wanted to enhance?
Well, I actually looked at myself as the ugly duckling. I spent a lot of time, I
can't imagine how handsome the other ducklings were, I have to be honest.
I actually was very overweight into my early 20s.
Oh, okay.
And even when I lost weight, I had it was the ultimate burden, which is I could lose a ton of weight and my body would thin out, but I had a horrible double chin dangling off my face.
You did?
Yes. And it was
You have it on your mantle now?
I went and had surgery.
And dangled it off your mantle.
Yes. And so I was actually kind of a female-minded. I would look in the mirror. I actually was anorexic for a time.
Wow.
I hated my body image. And so I did everything to change it.
It's just what's crazy is that you don't know that about, you see people and you think you can give them a scan and you know who they are. And so I would have never, when I scanned you, imagined that that's your background.
Yeah, it was a long process too of figuring out. I also had these things that maybe people would notice it about you, but I had frownies. Do you know what frownies are?
Like frown lines?
They're those lines, on your forehead, and mine were really deep and cavernous, even at a young age, and that was so embarrassing for me. I hated it. And then I discovered Botox.
Well, yeah, we talked about that before, and I was shocked that you had Botox.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, we have something to talk about. Not that I've had Botox, but of course I would not turn it down.
So part of, I guess, renovating myself for the better and being more attractive to women was that process of actually doing the work to try and be more physically attractive and thus be more confident. I mean, there's other ways you can gain confidence, and I learned that as well. But for the most part, it was really important for me to like what I was staring back in the mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I don't want to downplay physical appearance at all. If you're not happy with how you look, that has a huge impact on your confidence. If you can take control of it and do something about it, that can have a major effect on the way that you present yourself to other people. So I'm glad that you took the reins and did something. So how old were you when all of this was going on?
It was my late 20s to early 30s, which is kind of I think the time
That's like the
dudes
prime time.
should be doing this. You start rolling into your late 30s, then you're creepy old guy at the bar. And so it's kind of at the right time. But it was the perfect time. And I always say to any of my younger friends that are thinking of getting married and they're in long-term relations, I don't know if you guys agree with this, but I don't think any dude should be thinking about a serious relationship until they kind of get a lot of that stuff out of their system as far as dating. And
I agree for both men and women that they shouldn't be thinking about serious relationships until they get things out of their system or have experiences under their belt.
Yeah. I mean, I agree from my past experience. I was in a relationship for 8 years, and that was the only person I'd ever been with. So it was like, in my mind, I'm going like, well, then there's all these life experiences that I'm never going to have. Thus, I'm no longer in that relationship. It's just not a healthy place to start a relationship.
Yeah. Well, Pat, so I want to know. Well, I want to know, what was the first thing that had you stumbling into pickup? So you fixed your outward look. That was the first thing you focused on, and then how did you get into it?
Well, obviously, I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks for men, especially living in LA, because there's a lot of good-looking guys here, is how do you actually open? This was pre-Tinder and all these other things, which make it a little easier to connect, but not necessarily, for lack of a better term, close.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the idea of how, now that I feel better about myself, now I'm in a social environment, now there's women here that I'm attracted to, how do I get them to pay attention to me? How do I start a dialogue? And I guess that was the initial process that I had to figure out how to...
Because you just didn't know.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
they don't teach us in high school.
So what was it? No, and they should, and they're starting to actually, but they really absolutely they should. So how do you do it? What did you do?
Well, there's a lot of things. One is I learned women like hypotheticals, and it's to organically start a conversation with someone who has no idea who you are. One thing I would do, and with my cohort, Dr. Hyde, is we'd always think of hypothetical
Another
questions.
Great name for pickup. Dr. Hyde?
Dr. Hyde. We would...
That's his real name.
It's crazy.
We'd think of interesting things that we could discuss with females that we didn't know at a bar or some kind of social environment, a house party or something, and get a dialogue going. And because it wasn't so, hey, what's your name? What do you do? Typical things. We'd act like we were having a dialogue together and be in the same proximity of females that we wanted to talk to and kind of get them interested in what we were talking to kind of lure them in to have a dialogue with us.
And what did you think that they were interested in hearing?
Well, again, it would just be hypothetical things like something stupid. It would be like, what toppings do you like on your pizza? And we'd have like this really intense, discussion about that. And if you're 2 feet away from some girls who are...
It's not a bad idea.
Three girls hanging out at a bar, don't get me wrong, they could have fun. But if they're there to meet people too and interact.
Yeah.
And they like pizza.
So if you open up an opportunity that's very easy for them to jump into your conversation, it's just a nice little smooth transition to get people... talking.
Yeah. I wonder if any of those girls knew they were being played. Like, oh, they did. But I'm sure they didn't because that's such a casual thing.
It's so funny that you label that as being played, but that's not even close to being played at all. You're just trying to find a way to break into conversation to get to know people.
Right, but on the intentional scale. I wouldn't even have thought that was on a scale.
Out, you're saying.
Right, exactly. Yeah, not played. That's the wrong word.
So Pat, can you tell me how you would do that? So you guys would just start talking about pizza and be really intense about the type of toppings that you love, which I think is actually a really good conversation.
It's a really good idea.
Lean over to the girl and you'd say, what's your favorite topping? Or hey, help me out here.
Help us settle this argument. And then you'd include them in the discussion.
I'm a vegan. I don't eat pizza. It's like, all right, goodbye.
Another thing we do is a thing called infiltration. And that would be if we saw a group of girls, and God, I hope your list. Well, most of your listeners, I assume, are guys. So they may not hate me for this. If there was a group of 4 girls, I would initiate a conversation with the physically least attractive one.
Of course.
I would not get her hopes up, but it would be talking about just a generic conversation. Now, naturally, I'd notice the ones that I was more attracted to would take notice. And
that must be why all the guys talk to me. And I always thought it made me feel better, but fuck.
Kristen's like, I kill it when I go out.
I'm the ugly friend, but I didn't know.
My thought process was that women are very competitive. so that once they saw their friend, who maybe they wouldn't say this out loud, but felt themselves to be more attractive than their less attractive friend, they would be questioning themselves. And thus, they'd have to prove that they are the alpha attractive female. Thus, they would force to be talk to me.
Yeah.
And then, of course, my charm would win them over. But it was just another way to kind of get myself in a position.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a way to put your foot in the door. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
You're using psychology, in your advantage. You're using it in a way to not I'm not saying manipulate, but you're using it to your advantage. You're making use of the stuff that you have available
to you. Of the way people work.
Right, exactly.
It's absolutely a manipulation.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to be like soft and say, because I don't concern myself with that stuff like, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's manipulating. But I'm just saying, like, our minds are we do the same thing as a species. We're always, programmed the same way. So if you can see those behaviors and read them, you might as well use them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, when I go to parties and I'm uncomfortable, I look for the other wallflower there who's bored out of their mind and a little bit uncomfortable, and I go and I talk to them first to warm up my social muscles and get more comfortable in my surroundings. I don't consciously think, oh, there's a loser, why don't I use that person for 15 minutes? But I know that that's an easy way for me to gain comfort. And
it probably helps them, too.
It might help them as well, and I may like that person. I may have a good conversation with them. So it's not like a negative thing that you're doing. You're just trying to make yourself feel comfortable. So I wanted to ask you, like, how did you then develop your charming personality? Or did you always have that before? It was just sort of covered up because you were so self-conscious about the way that you looked and the way that you interacted with women.
I always thought I was funny, but I just had such low self-esteem. Like, I think my boss, Adam Carolla, talks about this quite a bit. The worst age for men is generally 16 to like their mid-20s, because there's guys that are older, that are making more money, they're more confident than you. You don't know who you are, but as a male, that beats you down to the point where once you start waking up as you get to your 30s, which is like prime time for being a dude, you're kind of just out of the fog of being an insecure guy. And now you have to start flexing those skills. I always thought I was funny. I always felt like I was a nice guy and could keep a conversation going. It was just more now moving into the territory of like, I'm good with guys talking. So how do I transfer
that over to women?
Yeah.
But you do have, because Marnie, you're not here, like, you can't physically read Patrick, but Patrick has a charisma or something very easy and nice to, there's a lighter energy. Yeah. So, so for someone who doesn't have that charm or charisma naturally like you do, then what?
All right, great question. Okay, so there's a lot of things. Well, first off, you have to start slowly. Okay, you're not going to, like, they had this show on in VH1 like 10 years ago called The Pickup Artist, which they had these guys that really were like starting at level 1, and they were trying to jump them in 2 weeks to like be at a bar and close with a girl that night. That's not the reality. Marnie, I've heard you on other podcasts, and like you talk about confidence quite a bit. There's confidence building for a guy who's, say, not attractive or that charismatic. One thing it starts with is you need to start feeling good about yourself. And there's a lot of things that can kind of start the ball rolling if you're someone who has low self-esteem. One is you need to be into things. Like
definitely.
And also you need, a big part of our lives are our occupations, our jobs. You need to have a sense of pride in whatever you're doing for 8 hours a day, or you're just going to be a beaten down person that's miserable and low self-esteem and feel less worthy. But if you can start getting a foundation of, look, I feel good about myself, I have a good job that I'm proud of, that's like the basics. And then you can work on the physical.
Okay. Yeah. I was watching, when I was home recently, my dad is obsessed with the Jim Jeffries show, which is on Comedy Central. And I don't know, why.
I thought you were going to say he's obsessed with the pickup artist.
Oh my God, no! He'd be like, "What?" But we were watching episode after episode after episode, and finally something came up that was relevant. I mean, I like the show, but this was finally relevant to me and what I do. But Jim Jeffries was talking about that group of men, Marnie. I think you might know the name or remember. We talked about him a long time ago when there was that shooting in Santa Barbara, and the guy was like mad. There's a name for him.
The ones who, I totally forget. The ones who like pretty much have sworn off women.
Yeah, and they think they deserve to be slept with and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, I forget what they're called.
Yeah, I'll Google it as we're talking. But Jim Jeffries was like, no one owes you sex. He said, look at me. I'm basically like a 4, but I learned comedy and to be funny, and now I get to have sex with people. I earned it. I didn't just go out there and have nothing to offer. And Jim Jeffries was just saying, learn something, have something to offer, get a skill, and then girls will fuck you. Stop being angry and lazy.
Okay, I have a great example of this. A number of years ago, I was in LA at like a Hollywood party. There was a guy there. He looked like Edward Norton, but like super chubby, like obese.
Oh, weird.
And I'm waiting in line at the bathroom, and he's sitting on the bed because it's in someone's bedroom. We're walking through there, right? And he's doing card tricks. And I couldn't believe the attention that he had of some of the more attractive guests at the party. And so all night long, he's doing magic tricks, a very unattractive male. Later on that night, as I'm walking to my car, I see him in a 1992 Ford Taurus, and he is getting fellatio from one of those girls in his car. And that was actually, it's funny here you say develop a skill. That was actually a light bulb going off like, oh my God. That was his
best card trick.
He made his penis disappear in her face.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you need. Anyway, like to go back to if you're not naturally charismatic or, whatever, from the inside out you start, and that's by getting confident inside and learning things, and that's your inside starting to get charismatic, and then eventually it'll come out through your skin.
Well, you want to hear one of the more simple, I call it the suit effect.
The what effect?
The suit effect. At a wedding, all right, so you'll see men that have to wear the suit for the ceremony. When they come out, the first thing you're going to hear of every female is, oh my God, look how handsome you look.
Yeah.
All that guy did was put on a suit. Now he's hearing that he's handsome, and he is feeling confident, at least for that hour or that minute, that moment. Isn't that interesting that by wearing a different kind of clothes, that can change your behavior? Yeah. And so it really, you can transform with these simple things.
That happens to me. I most often I'm in my little box in my office at home wearing my pajamas, but when I decide to dress up and put high heels on and lipstick and do my hair, I feel like a totally different person. So 100% what you're wearing on the outside can have an impact on how you feel on the inside. So not that they're like little cheat things, but they're little assister things to help push you along while you're working on that inside portion of you, which is exactly what you were talking about. Finding hobbies that you like, having passion in your job, finding new ways to interact with people and challenging yourself. So what's the next step for you? Like after you do all these things for yourself and you're feeling good about yourself, how do you then develop like a personality? How do you then transfer that to engaging with women and having them be attracted to you?
Okay, well, that would be a longer process of trial and error. Okay. And so one thing is, again, just to go back to clothes and how important they are, nothing feels better.
Speaking of, though, however, Patrick knows what I'm going to point out right now, what he's wearing. He's wearing, like, wind pants with a stripe down the side and, like, a really wrinkly white V-neck, like, that should be washed.
Kristen, this is radio.
Yeah, but it's also you're in person with me and I'm dying. No.
One thing was kind of getting down clothes that you're comfortable with. It was very important. Even as a guy, you have to feel good when you go out and you're going to be in a social situation. Men don't really talk about this a lot, but finding those 3 outfits that you know are your go-tos that go out that you know that fit you well.
Yeah. I call it your uniform.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. For me, when I go out at night, I don't go out that often and I have a really hard time with clothes. So when I go, I know I have this uniform, and this uniform, that if I put it on, I'll fit in a night setting where I feel like pretty, but I'm not trying too hard. I have those as a girl. So guys need to have them too. So if a girl's having a hard time figuring out clothes, then a guy definitely is going to have a hard time figuring out clothes.
Right.
So doing it in advance.
Doing it in advance, and I always tell guys, like, if you want to feel good about yourself, nothing feels good like a new pair of shoes or like a new shirt that fits you just great. Like even if you're in a large shirt or extra, something will look good on you. There's large like men that can look good in a suit. Or
totally.
Something. So that's one. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Marnie, but like that's kind of a starting point so that you're feeling good about yourself in a social environment right off the bat. So Once you're there, then it's kind of like trial and error, understanding what works when you're engaging with females, most importantly, what doesn't work. One thing that I used to do very well that my Dr. Hyde kind of picked up on was I had said, I always said, don't be a wolf in a social environment. I had caught on very early on in trying to be a pickup artist that women have eyes on the back of their heads. The second a guy walks into a bar social situation, even if you think that female doesn't notice you came in, she did. And just because she doesn't look at you. And so your behavior is kind of being watched immediately when you walk in the door. If they see you when you walk around and talk to 3 different groups of girls, you are automatically scratched off the list as just a guy trying to chase girls that night. So just kind of monitoring your behavior, knowing that you're going to be watched. I was always very well aware of that. Another thing I had, which was called thinning the herd. I would not be obvious about it, but I could walk into a room, and if I was out there, and we're just talking for the purposes of this podcast, not every time I went out, I was going out to meet women, but when that was the mission.
Some nights it was men.
Yes, exactly. I was always better at that. When the mission was going after girls, I had this thing called thinning the herd, which is I would do an audit of the room and basically cross off what I would consider time wasters and then have another category for potentials. So,
wow. Oh my God.
So obviously girls that I'd see with a guy, unless he might be like the gay bestie, which you could kind of catch on, she's crossed off the list. Any women that would be eating food, like a gigantic plate of food, they'd be scratched off the list. Well, look, I know.
Don't you want a girl that can eat, though? Wouldn't that show, hey, she's got a good personality, she's allowed to eat?
Why does that get them off the list?
This would be if the mission that night was to close. A woman is not going to sleep
with a full stomach.
A woman will
smart.
never sleep with you on a full
That's true.
stomach.
That's very true.
That's true.
You also,
unless it's full of alcohol. Then she's game.
Well, that would work except for if she was sloppy drunk.
Right.
If you caught that, that's just a big problem.
Yeah.
You've
got literally like a mannequin on your hands you've got to carry around for the night.
Yeah. Now on the potentials list, the perfect scenario would be a set of 2 girls out together and drinking, and preferably on a weeknight past the witching hour of 11 p.m. That was the perfect.
Sweet spot.
That was the sweet spot. Yes, and so you'd have to kind of, monitor yourself, but also identify the room. Like who, I have guys that tell me, "Oh, I go to Hooters." Why are you going to Hooters? You're fishing in a pond with no fish.
They have really good chicken wings.
If you could get better chicken wings somewhere else, so that would be like go to places where I'm probably going off, digressing a little bit or going off track here, but
no, this is perfect. I love everything that you're saying. I think it's really good information.
But yes, all right. So then going into a room, kind of monitoring your environment, not wasting your time with bartenders and married people or couples, and kind of identifying who were the best targets. Boy, that's probably a bad word to say, targets. And once you did, you could whittle it down. And then now that you've narrowed it down to your targets, now you can start employing other, tactics.
That's when you start talking about pizza.
Exactly. You could. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so then what happens after the pizza conversation? Like, what do you do to segue that conversation into more, and then go into taking them home?
Sure. Okay. So now there's a vetting process. So ultimately, women make the final decision. You can be as charming as you want. Say there's 3 girls you're talking to, you're interacting. One rule I always had is if there's 3 girls and you're not sure which one is kind of interested, you have a poker face. You don't play your hand. And if you do, you make sure that the others don't see it. You can actually kind of have them all playing off themselves to kind of get your attention. But the one who's ultimately going to win out is the one that you would like to potentially go home with or get their number or whatever. But this has been documented quite a bit in a lot of books on this. But there's the touch factor. A female that leans over and touches your arm. Some women do a thing where they'll actually turn around and make sure that part of their hair touches your body.
Oh, sneaky.
Elongated eye contact.
Oh, I'm looking away.
There's a lot of like just physical movements that women do to subtly tell you that they're interested in. So, that's kind of how you're getting to that process.
A lot of guys mistake those, though.
Yes, they
so,
do.
like, a girl accidentally flips her hair into a guy. She literally is just trying to get the hair off of her shoulder and hits a guy, and all of a sudden he's got a boner.
Yes. It should be multiple.
So how do you know what's real and what's not?
I'd say at the end of the day, the main factor is extended eye contact. Females will let you know that they aren't interested by how long they will make eye contact with you. They send messages. Sorry, I'm talking to you like you're not here. But I found that they are really conveying that they're interested through elongate.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then at that point, you have to do a thing called splitting, which is you have to somehow tactfully find a way to get her to split off from her girlfriends. And that's why I would always say the best way is a set of two. You want to find two girls at a bar, and then you want to have a wingman.
But I would think so. I see the set of two. So the friend has someone to go with, because I would think if it was just two women, then it wouldn't work because she's leaving behind her friend, and then that's not going to happen.
I did that all the time. I did it all the time.
You'd get a girl to leave behind her friend without someone, or
not leave behind a friend, but at the end of the night when they're splitting, going their separate ways.
Okay.
And I'd always get the speech from the friend.
She'd go home with you.
She'd go, "All right, you're going home with my friend. You better be good."
Yeah.
And, through the course of the evening, I'd kind of proven myself to be, a normal person that is going to be respectful to their friend.
No murder.
No murderer.
So did you use these tactics to meet your wife?
I did not. I was getting burned out, as you should.
Yeah.
This should not be a lifetime, endeavor for men. This should be,
to get experience and have fun. And
We'll take a step back for a second. Like, why not? Why is it exhausting? Like, why is it not?
Sounds exhausting.
A positive.
It is. I'll tell you. In the beginning, it's fun, but maybe it could be like this with anything. It's at some point gets empty, and not to take this down a bad road, but you have to keep in mind of the wreckage that you leave behind. When you're having countless one-night stands, and you can't have countless one-night stands without not returning phone calls to females that thought you were interested. And so there's definitely an emotional debt you pay to the people that you've hurt. Like I remember, there's a lot of girls that I went home and slept with, and they did not want a second, they did not want a second date. And what that does to you is it really starts wearing down
your self-esteem.
Yes, and you go right back into that hole again. So, I mean, ultimately, I think, as I kind of was talking about at the top of the show, this is something that men should get out of their system. I can't tell you how many people I went to high school with that got married to their high school sweethearts, and now I see them on Facebook, and there's been infidelity. They're divorced. They did not experience this. Now, not everybody needs to go and take it to the level I did. Certainly. But to get this out of your system by your mid-30s, and then you're like, I honestly, since I met my wife and have been with my wife, I have not thought about cheating. I've not thought, of course, there's fantasies when you see a pretty girl or whatever, but I've never actually thought of acting out on that. And I really do associate that with literally having gotten this out of my system.
How long have you been married?
We've been married for 1.5 years, but we've been together for over 5 years.
Oh, wow. So even before the marriage, there was no need for the infidelity?
Well, no, I wasn't with anybody. She was my first girlfriend for like 3 years.
But there was no craving even before marriage?
No, there wasn't. No. And there were some bad experiences there. I had dated a girl that I remember on the date. Marnie, you'd say that if she was a guy, she had broken every rule on a date that you can. She was bragging about having dated P. Diddy in the 2000s, so I had to listen to her talk about a half hour for that. Then her second story was about getting pregnant by a promoter in Las Vegas, and he paid her $20,000 to abort the baby because he wanted to marry one of the blonde-haired girls from the Playboy Mansion show.
Oh, my God, so worth it.
Yeah, and I'm listening to this girl, and I drive her home, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'm actually trying to figure out how to sleep with this girl, and I hate her.
Yeah, right.
And it was kind of an awakening for me, like, what are you doing here? So,
I mean, is
that what the difference is? Sorry that I'm interrupting, but is that what the difference is? Is that you're not caring? I guess I don't understand how it's different when you transfer it over to somebody that you like, because I think that a lot of these tactics, while you may see them as being manipulative, I think they're just sort of cheat sheets for having fun, playful interactions with people but it all matters on what your intention is on the back end. Like, what did you do when you met your wife? What was the difference in the way that you were interacting?
We had known each other, so it started on a friendship, and it wasn't based on my goal to have sex with her. And it was, wow, I really like this person. She's funny. She's a good person. She cares about other people. She cares about me. And so my intentions with her were never that let's sleep together first and then figure this out after. It was like getting to know a person and then developing a relationship and a friendship and trust, and then having and then, being a couple. That might be kind of a boring answer.
Do you ever use any? No, it's not a boring answer. So do you ever use any of those tactics now? Like if you're ever in a situation where you have trouble with conversation, and it's not necessarily
he'll stand close to Adam Carolla and he'll start talking about pizza toppings and hope Adam joins in.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Do you use them for other people?
You definitely can. But not obviously. You're saying like, can you apply some of these tenets or rules to just business life or in other aspects of your relationship? Yeah, I think so. I do. I think, and that was probably part of the experiment is using these things. I maybe had these life lessons or life tools, and I applied them to trying to see women naked. But at the end of the day, they could have been used for anything, to apply to anything. I mean, they're all social things, as Kristen mentioned earlier.
Do you feel like you were tricking these women and manipulating them?
I'll tell you where the manipulation comes. If you know kind of off the bat that there's no relationship here, and the conversation you're having when a female asks the question, do you see yourself being in a relationship, and you say yes when you don't, then I'd have to say that is manipulative.
Yeah.
And that's where I talk about that, being a pickup artist, you're picking up women to have sex with them and to continue along this process down this road. If you do that, inevitably people are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
We should take a break.
Yeah.
Because I just looked at the clock. And so we'll be back talking to Patrick and answering questions. So stay tuned. Hey, guys, it's Kristen. Are you having a hard time dating online and not getting any attention to your profile? Are you having a hard time bantering with women? You don't really know what to say? Well, if you want help, you can find me at kristencarney.com/datinghelp. I will help you with your profile, with bantering, so many cool things. And Patrick was just talking about manipulation and how to maybe avoid is that even an option, to avoid the manipulation at all tactics?
There absolutely is a way. You just don't make false promises to people, right? So like I've always said this about pickup artists. I don't really have anything against people who use pickup tactics to interact with other people. It's when their intention is to mislead. And that can happen with anything that you do, whether or not you're using a routine from a pickup artist or something else that's coming from your own mind and your own creation, but it's still false information that you're giving to somebody else. So I happen to be a fan of a lot of the pickup materials that are out there. I'm not a fan of the intention behind the way that a lot of people use them. Like when I read Neil Strauss's book, The Game, and when I met Neil, when I hung out with Neil, and he's a genuine, awesome person. When I read a lot of the things that were in there, I was like, these things are genius. These are great ways to get people engaged in conversation with you. What happened on the back end for him and for a lot of other people is that, like what Pat is saying, is that you get kind of drunk with this power and you tend to mislead and hurt people who do get attached to you, or you tend to feed off of some of their insecurities to benefit yourself, which I do not like. My point being that there are some wonderful things that are a part of the pickup industry that, when applied correctly, can be used wonderfully for really genuine, authentic people.
I agree. Can I pose something to you, Marnie and Kristen? You tell me if this is very manipulative.
Okay.
We had this thing called baiting, which was the idea of kind of staging an environment in which, like, for example, all right, on the show The Bachelor, okay?
Yeah.
There's 25, 30 women that show up to be on this show to win the heart of this guy. They don't know him from Adam. Who knows if he was walking on the street the day before, if they would have even been attracted to him or want his attention.
Yeah. They'd probably say, get out of my way. And then go, oh, wait, you're worth something? Hi.
Exactly. Well, what they're trying to win is the competitive nature of women wanting to win a guy's heart, and they're competing against one each other. Do you agree with that, Marnie? Like, part of the why women get so crazy in 3 days of knowing this guy and crying and fighting is the competition?
Yeah, well, it's an element of it for sure, yes.
So with that, my friend and I would actually invite some of our female friends or coworkers out for the entire purpose was to create an environment that he and I were wanted by multiple girls. So the environment or the staging that we did was set to be a show for other women in the social environment. Like, oh, who are these guys? Why are there 4 girls looking to tell them a story? Well, they were our friends forever at work, and now we invited them out, and we've kind of set this up that they're all we would actually do physical things to make them lean into us as like they're trying to, be more physical with us. And then once we noticed we were getting attention by other females in the social environment, we'd actually kind of branch out and we'd start working the room. But we were setting a scene and we called it baiting, and it worked like a charm.
Quick question.
Yeah, that's my business. I'm a wing girl. That's like, I am totally for what you're doing. I don't have any problems with that whatsoever. I don't think it's manipulation at all. I think you're using what you have. You're having fun with people. You're not misleading them. It's not like you're leaning into the girl and saying, like, I totally want you. I want to be with you. I want to be your boyfriend. I'm madly in love with you. While your real intention is for you to look awesome to other girls and like a highly wanted guy, and then you say, okay, so but peace, I'll see you later, I'm going to go home and fuck that girl. Like, I just really think that it's the intention behind what you're doing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with you saying, like, let's invite like 8 girls that are super hot to hang out with us, because who doesn't want to hang out with 8 hot girls that can possibly lead to 8 more hot girls? I don't see that as a negative thing.
My question with this whole thing is that this is so much work. Was it worth it? Like, the ass that you got, was it worth it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The stories I have.
It sounds fun. You're doing it with
sounds like a
Dr.
lot of work.
Hyde. How can it be bad?
Yeah.
I actually feel bad for some of my high school friends that stayed in the small town. Not to say, they probably say, hey, Pat, you had that LA life. We love this small town life. I love my family, whatever. I guess it's just a completely different path.
I hate my life.
Well,
that's what I hear from them, actually.
People in LA are looking at the middle of America going, ugh, can you believe they just live in these nice homes and have regular jobs? And they're like, that's so sad. And then those people look at the people in LA and go, can you believe they live in studio apartments? That's so sad.
I know.
So each side thinks we're both sad. But But yeah, they're probably looking at Pat going, oh man, if only when I was 25, if I went out there and just macked it with ladies, I'd be so happy today. So not that you have to live in a city to do that, but just to give yourself the opportunity to have some life experience is important.
Well, the thing that I really admire about you, Pat, I don't know you, I can't even see you, but I think it's really awesome that you wanted something for your life. You weren't happy with what was going on for yourself, and you found solutions for it, which is absolutely amazing. And you were able to give yourself the experiences that you wanted to have. Like, some of these people who, live in small towns, as you said before, may not want to have that experience. It's not their dream or their fantasy or their goal, but you wanted something different for yourself, and you went out and you made it happen, which I think is absolutely amazing.
Yes, lived an insane life in the dark regions of
and
LA.
Now he's dying of AIDS.
Right.
Hey, Marnie, you mentioned you're the ultimate wing girl. In this kind of these tenets that me and Dr. Hyde created, we actually put together a doctrine.
You should have been Mr. Jekyll. So switch it, like Mr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. That would have been kind of cool.
We actually created a doctrine of wingman or wingwoman code. Could I throw some of the tenets out? And
oh my God, yes, of course, please.
Okay. Always take one for the team, and I think that's pretty obvious, right? Which is if your buddy is, if you have to dive on a grenade of a girl.
Yeah, that's your main job.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
I assumed you'd think that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how do you feel about this one? You have to back up the story. So if he is saying that he is an attorney, but he's really just a paralegal.
It's like improv. You go with your buddy and you say yes, and he also has a house that's beautiful.
Exactly. Actually, we always
But you
use
build
that.
each other up.
Okay.
I'm not into lying or misrepresenting yourself.
But
I'm not into that one, but I am into pumping your friend up and like making them sound awesome.
So what would happen if you were out with a friend and a male friend, and he was looking for women, and he said he was a doctor, and you knew he wasn't? Would you go with it, or would you go, oh, actually, stop fucking around? You'd have to go with it.
I would go with it 100%, but I wouldn't be happy about it. And then because I'm a girl, you can see that on my face. And then it would totally bring down my energy for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't be as much a part of whatever we were doing.
Totally.
Like I would be very not into that.
But as a wingman, you have to go with it full smile and just keep the energy up.
Yes.
For your bro friend.
You're like, yeah, he's an astronaut. That's what he is.
The next one is pretty easy, which is be a facilitator. And I have done this, and I've had it done for me, and it's always like very appreciated, which is your wingman must kind of finish the night out with you. If it's you've had too many drinks, he needs to drive his car to get you to said location, basically do all the things. A lot of people don't know that. I had to kind of, I had experience kind of auditioning wingmen through this process until I found Dr. Hyde. Oh yeah, because I had one of the tenets that we came up with is never step on your teammate's dick, and that was the main problem I was having when I was trying.
If it's long enough, that'd be awesome.
Who are you?
He's a pickup artist.
It's an expression. It's a turn of phrase.
Huge penis. Okay.
Meaning, like you're talking to a girl, things are going well, and your supposed wingman is then trying to slide in on you.
Ooh, no, that's yeah.
And that happened quite a bit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
With Dr. Hyde?
No, that's where I found Dr. Hyde. He's
with the
my
auditioners.
soulmate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
of course.
I wish I got to meet him.
Oh, you'll get to meet him.
Because Marnie, he was going to come on the show too, but he had to cancel or wasn't available. So we'll
have him on one time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, he's very good. And the last one's promote your teammate, which is just basically build them up. I mean, they're all kind of the same thing. Essentially, all positive, promote,
even
facilitate.
if your friend is like the Buffalo Bills or the Cleveland Browns, still build them up, even if you know they're garbage. Stand by your friend.
Yeah. But I think it's wonderful that you found somebody like that. Like, you guys want to make tenants together. You want to do all these things together. Like, you kind of found a soulmate during this process. And you guys are still friends, obviously?
Not only that, we both own homes 1 block from one another.
Wow.
No.
Yes.
Are your
That's
wives
awesome.
friends with each other?
We are best friends, and our wives have to listen to us kind of tell these old stories. We, of course,
that's
edit
awesome.
ourselves a little bit, but yeah.
Oh, my God. You tell stories in front of your wives about, like, you getting laid?
Yes. Actually, yeah.
No, that's awesome.
My wife tells me stories all the time of like her dating experiences, and I love all her stories. Most of them don't end in sex, and I really probably don't want to hear that. But her dating life in LA, I love hearing all her stories about how cheap guys were. Sorry to dig her. She told me one story where a guy actually dropped her off at the end of the date. It was a mediocre date, and he had a crappy car. And as she's about to get out, he goes, "I want you to know you passed the test."
But you didn't pass mine, motherfucker.
She should have said that. She said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm actually a multimillionaire, and I just drove up in this car to test you to make sure you weren't superficial."
Wow. Well, that's kind of cool.
Well, he's lying out of his ass.
Well,
That is cool. Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh,
he wanted to know if she wanted to go back.
Like, oh, my God.
He wanted to know if she wanted to hang out longer. Was his
Wow.
purpose? Yeah.
Interesting tactic for rich men. So if you're a rich guy.
I think that's way douchier than anything that you talked about on the show. I think it is. I totally think so. I think it's horrible.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I love this. How come you haven't been on the show before?
Well, it was funny because I was here and I said something about this podcast, and I don't know how we really broached what the topic was of this podcast, but I mentioned it was about dating and relationships, and Patrick was like, he just perked up immediately and was like, "Oh my God, pickup artist, me. I talk about this stuff all the time, or I like it." And so, anyway, I thought, well, yeah, we have to do the show then.
This podcast is like Kristen's old boyfriend. It's not really something she wants to talk about, not something she's 100% proud of, but it's something that she does. But I'm glad that you were on the show. I want to go through one question that we have from a user. Do we have enough time?
Please.
Yeah.
Okay. This one is on body language, so I thought it would be interesting for you. So, hey, girls and guests, here are some thoughts and questions as pertaining to body language. I have read many articles about this over the last few years, usually written by guys. First, full frontal facing versus quartering. It has been said the full front can be very intimidating, therefore it should slightly quarter away, as I usually do. Now, I do see approaching with full frontal can be very intimidating, especially to women, after making initial contact, assuming she responds favorably. Then full frontal can be initiated to convey full attention. What are your thoughts? And this is a three-parter, by the way. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my first reaction when I picture a man approaching me, walking straight toward me, it's not necessarily intimidating. It's uncomfortable, and it's kind of scary. Much. Yeah, so yeah. I wouldn't ever want that because it's like, is this man a predator or is he a friendly person? So I can see the side, but I still think turning, even though once there's like approval or conversation, I still think you should be to the side more. Unless you guys are a couple or on like your third date, I don't think standing at a woman is attractive. It's just too manly. I don't know. It's creepy.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. What do you think, Pat?
I always did a side-by-side because of that. I noticed it would be like almost like I'm 6'2", almost 6'3", so I'd be standing over you looking down at most females. And so I would always do like a side-to-side. And then I had this thing where if we were having a conversation, I'd lean in.
A lean in is good.
A lean in, and obviously that would bring us a little closer. And that was kind of my move. But yes, I think it's too intimidating for a male, and it's these days we don't like making eye contact initially,
right? And it just seems like a threatening stance. It seems like something you do to not gain favorably with someone, but to overpower them.
Yeah, and almost like you're conveying too much confidence too early. Yeah. We haven't gained a trust or comfortability yet. Yeah,
definitely.
So how would you know when to lean in? Like, when would you do the lean in move?
Again, eye contact, and then look, women for the most part don't spend a lot of time talking to a guy that they don't have some kind of interest in. It doesn't mean romantic, but if they're sticking around, there's no other reason for them to stay there other than continue a conversation. If it would go longer than, say, just to put a time on it, if you're kind of connecting, you're having a good conversation, it could be as early as 5 minutes, but it could be, maybe hold off for about 15 minutes and almost tease them a little bit, because I used to like to tease touch, I called it, which is I'd get really close to them and actually not make physical contact with their body, and I'd almost pull away. So I'm kind of taunting them with my physicality. And
that works, actually.
Yes, it does.
It totally works. Oh, these are good things. We haven't talked to pickup artist people in so long, and I forgot about all these things. Okay, so here's another one. And another point is hand position. You do not seem to address this ever. Naturally, the crossed arms and legs by default are pretty much self-explanatory. I have heard the thumbs are a symbol of a man's will and therefore should not be hidden. I used to do that, but sticking my fingers in my pockets is rather unnatural and awkward. Then I read that the thumbs should be in the pockets so that the fingers loosely, naturally point towards the crotch, thus pointing out the obvious. Do women even notice this, and is it important?
I just picture that's like, it sounds so like, hey, babe, I've got my hand in my pocket, and it sounds very like dad. Like a dad would be trying to look cool, and so he's got his thumb in his pocket and his fingers dangling casually. It sounds It
sounds so stiff to me.
It sounds so set up and so fake. Like he's thought about it. He's like, I'm going to put my thumb in my pocket. That doesn't happen naturally unless you're in a bad movie.
I agree, but I think later in the evening, after a long conversation, when it may be turning to romantic, you can actually kind of peacock a little bit that way. Obviously, it shouldn't be that obvious, but kind of keep yourself open. Like as Marnie mentioned earlier, like crossing your arms is saying I'm disinterested, I'm disconnected from the conversation, having your hands by the side. I mean, personally, I would always have a drink in my hand, so I knew where one of my hands was going to be, right? But nothing that projects uncomfortability, and you can feel it. Women let you know if, what's the word where they kind of like pull back?
Like a hesitation or something?
Yeah, there's another word. Well, they almost like recoil.
Oh, yeah, that's not a good sign.
That's definitely not a good sign. She's letting you know, like, I don't like the movements that you're making. I mean, you can, men should be overall more perceptive of the environment and understanding like body language.
But like the body language stuff or the hands and everything, it's like when I think about breathing is normal. I do it all the time. But the minute I think about breathing, I'm like, oh my God, how do I breathe? When do I breathe? What's the rhythm of my breath? Too. So when you think about it, it becomes so unnatural feeling. So I feel like when you really just focus on your hands and your thumbs and your arms and everything, that's when it becomes unnatural. Right. So obviously you want to like be able to employ some tactic of like the way your body should be facing, but I don't think you should overthink where your fingers should be, because then it's the breathing and now you're like awkward and it's so obviously forced, you know?
Well, I wanted to read this one exercise that I stumbled upon. It's something that I used to include in my boot camps that I was doing, and I'm actually including it in a program on first impressions and approaching that's coming out pretty shortly. But I'm going to read it to you because I think it's actually a good way to end the show, and it talks about body language, but it's a really quick way to put confidence in your body. So I'm going to read you the exercise, and I'll read it just as I've written it in my book for the boot camp. So I said, a while back, I met an amazing woman named Erica who informed me of a quick tool she provides women on how to quickly find confidence in every situation. It's a tool she developed while working in the music industry. Erica used to work in brand development with different artists, which meant that she helped shape the type of persona an artist would take on to reflect their brand. To help her artists, she would ask them, how do you want people to see you as an artist, and who do you see yourself being? They would give tons of answers like, I'm the army type, I'm the blonde bombshell, I'm the grunge rocker, and Erica would help them clearly define this persona to establish a usable brand that the artist could clearly visualize on a moment's notice so that they could quickly put it into their body. Now, Erica uses this tool to help normal individuals establish their own brands, but she makes everyone select an animal type, as she has found that animals are easy to visualize and then emulate. And I thought it was genius, so I decided to borrow Erica's tool and share it with you. Here is how Erica's tool works. She selects an animal for each person and attaches 5 attributes to each animal. Once the person can visualize the animal and its attributes, they can quickly embody the attributes of the animal. So before going out in public or in a moment of doubt, a person can picture their animal persona and quickly take on its persona. It's a quick and easy way to embody confidence. And so here's what I want you to do. So here's the exercise that I'm giving to people. So take about 5 minutes and select an animal. So for the guys that I work with, I tell them to select an animal that they see as symbolizing strength or a certain way that they want to be. So most men choose a bear or a wolf or a snake or something that's a leader in the animal world. And then the second thing is write down the animal on a piece of paper as well as 5 key attributes of the animal you want to embody, and then take 1 minute to embody the attributes and answer these questions. How would this animal stand? How would this animal walk? How would this animal hold eye contact? And how would this animal talk to people? And how would this animal go after what he wants? So I did this exercise after I met with Erica, which is why I now pass it on to so many people. And I chose the jaguar, and I attached the attributes, and I thought through how it would walk and talk and stand. And so now whenever I picture a jaguar, like I'm doing it right now, right away, my back is straight, I'm sitting up, my voice slows down, and quickly the jaguar animal just gets into my body, and I can quickly become this confident, strong animal, and I can project that to other people. I know that's like a long-winded thing, but anyway, it's a really good exercise for people to do.
This is the exercise that allowed us to get this podcast, Marnie. Do you remember that?
Really?
Yes.
No.
You told me.
What do you mean?
When we were talking to Podcast One.
I remember.
When Marnie and I first started, we were on Podcast One Network, and I was approaching them, and Marnie told me to be an animal, and I was a lion, and it worked, and we got a show on Podcast One.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I even remember where we were driving down Lincoln when I told you this exercise. Mm-hmm. That's so funny, but it really works, doesn't it?
It did work.
Goes into your body, and then we got a podcast.
Yeah, Marnie, can I tell you how much I love that? I had never actually thought about that. I was doing something similar that didn't involve the animal world, but what I would do is I would take a movie character. Like, for example, Vince Vaughn in Wedding Crashers.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
I would break down all the likable things about him. He was, very funny, very likable. Confident in a room, and I would think of that character when I was out.
That's a good idea.
And I would kind of emulate him.
Yeah.
Not stealing lines from the movie.
Of course not.
But embodying the character that he created on the screen.
Don't be literal with it.
Yeah.
Don't go out and get a DUI like you did last weekend. But
I love that, Marnie. I think that's a great
It is a great idea.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think that's a good way to end this show, and I hope that everybody who's listening can practice this exercise.
The problem is
I use it everywhere.
I now pick a chicken, so things aren't going so well.
Right, exactly.
All right, well, Marnie, you usually end the show, so I'll bow out here.
So, okay, you've shared your tenets, but do you have a book for your pickup artistry, or like how can people find out more about you?
It's a 250-page book that has not been published because I got married and I never finished it. And actually, to be quite honest, when I read through some of the chapters, some of the things I wrote, I now am kind of a different person. Yes, thank you for asking about it. It may never see the light of day, but I'd love to be back on this show. I'd love to be on the show.
Yeah, I would love to have you on. And I would love to meet you in person. Do you have a book for married men?
That's a good idea.
Maybe. I'll work on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. You're wonderful. But you do have a podcast, though, right, on the Corolla Network that people can listen to?
Correct. It's another Bachelor podcast. I'm so manly. Me and my two cohorts, Nick Davis and Dylan Wren from...
Who are waiting patiently to do the show. That
we do an after show for The Bachelor. And even
show.
if your audience is predominantly male, which I don't know if it is, but... Please, you would still like this podcast. Another Bachelor podcast. Find it on iTunes or Spotify.
Yeah, I tell them to watch The Bachelor and The Bachelorette just so they can watch, like, female behavior. I think it's a great, like, case study for people and for them to learn signs that women give and ways that women behave. I think that all men should be watching that show.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for being on the show. You are wonderful. Kristen, you're awesome, too. I haven't seen you in, like, a month.
How's your house?
I'm looking forward to hanging out with you. My house is awesome.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm
it's
jealous.
really,
I can't wait to see it.
It feels weird, though. It's weird. It's like, I miss my old house, but, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really nice.
Yeah, you're in a beautiful, brand new house. It's going to feel weird. I mean, it would for me because I'm not used to being in beautiful places, but for you, you'll adjust fine.
You are now. You're like Miss Fancy. Don't even talk about that. But you guys are wonderful for listening to our show. Chris is wonderful. Pat's wonderful. I haven't done this in so long.
Marnie's high. You sound high. Everyone's
I did have I had a cocktail before I did the
show. Makes sense.
It's the only way that I could stay up till 9:30.
It didn't make you pass out?
No, not when I have tequila. I needed something. My husband was like, have a drink. It'll keep you awake. I was falling asleep before you called. Anyway, new episodes of the Ask Women podcast come out every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific. Well, not every Thursday. Most Thursdays. At 5 p.m. Yeah, exactly. 5 p.m. Pacific. Don't be a loser and download individual episodes. Please go and subscribe to our show. Leave comments. Tell other people to listen to our show. Share our show. And keep being wonderful and supportive of us. And we really appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.